What's up, guys? I'm BTC. Over the last week, we've gotten more news about Overwatch 2 than we had in the previous several months, which is pretty good, and hopefully this trend continues. The latest news that we've gotten is that there's going to be some pretty significant nerfs coming up to the support characters for Mercy, Zenyatta, Brigitte, some being the biggest ones, but there's going to be some across-the-board nerfs as well. We also learned that tanks are going to be getting some across-the-board buffs, and we don't quite know anything too much about the DPS yet. They haven't talked too much about that. But one of the other really big announcements that happened just recently was that Overwatch 2 is going to be what is used for the next season of the Overwatch League. Now, it's not going to be the full version of the game. I don't expect that they're going to include the new characters, but we should see kind of an earlier version of Overwatch 2. In fact, that's kind of what they called it, an early version of Overwatch 2. It's going to have the 5v5 format, and it's probably going to have most of the changes that we're going to get for Overwatch 2. So let's jump into the changes for the support characters. Now, technically, all of these are going to be nerfs, and that's usually looked at as a bad thing, but keep in mind that most of these changes are being attributed to the fact that the game is moving from a 6v6 into a 5v5, and what that means is you have one less tank to heal. So it's a lot easier for both of your supports to keep that one tank alive now, and you don't have to split your focus as much. Or you could have one of your healers dedicated to just the tank, and then the other one can be dedicated to healing your 2 DPS. So it's basically easier to be a healer in Overwatch 2 than it is in Overwatch 1, and that's why they need to make some of those reductions. So the first thing here is they said that so far, they've not made a ton of changes on how the support role works in Overwatch 2. There are some meaningful changes, such as removing the stun from Brigitte, and they'll talk about that more later on. However, for the most part, the playstyle of your favorite support heroes should feel familiar and similar to retail, currently what they are in Overwatch 1. Right away, that's a pretty significant nerf to Brigitte. If you remove the stun from Shield Bash, all you're left with is a little bit of movement and 5 damage. That's all it does, though funny enough, people would probably still complain about it. But that's a really significant change to the character. It means that a lot of the counter options are just not there anymore, and you're going to have to play a little bit differently. So that kind of doesn't really agree with what Blizzard was saying about how, for the most part, the playstyle of your favorite support should feel familiar and similar. That's not really the case, because if you completely remove Brigitte's ability to stun, well, you're going to have to change how you play the character, and a lot of the options that were available to you before are just not going to be there anymore. There is some more information about stuns and CC, and I'll talk about that a little later in the video. Continuing with the supports, in regard to the self-healing abilities for the supports, Blizzard said that as of now, they have no plans to remove those self-healing abilities from the heroes, like Regenerative Burst and the Bionade. They remain a powerful part of their respective heroes' identities, and will be tuned to account for the passive self-healing abilities that are also available. So that means that a bunch of that stuff that's currently in the game is still going to be there, but as far as healing the self-character, healing the support itself, they're probably going to end up getting weakened. So Baptiste's Regenerative Burst, for example, which was recently changed, so it made it so that he would heal himself more than he would heal his teammates, that's probably going to be flipped around and reversed. So now it will heal him a little less, and it will heal his teammates a little more. Continuing, Blizzard says that in our playtest, having one less tank made it clear to us that tanks generally contribute much more damage than they mitigate, even on retail. And because of the drop in overall damage being dealt out, supports were actually too effective at keeping the entire team alive, so we're testing a tuned-down healing output across the board to ensure that team fights still resolve in a way that doesn't feel drawn out or frustrating to play against. And that's exactly what I was saying before, where because now you have the one less character, and because the tanks are largely going to be more focused on damage instead of protecting the team, they're going to be bruisers instead of tanks, basically. And because of that, all of the healing is just a little too much now. So you're going to see kind of across-the-board healing nerfs. This means that every healing character is going to do a little bit less, and this does feel kind of bad, and it is technically a nerf, but again, you're still going to have the same kind of impactfulness as you currently do, even though it feels worse. Another issue with supports is the possibility of damage boost being a little too powerful now that you have one less character. So Blizzard says on paper, Discord is theoretically weaker with one fewer person per team benefiting from the debuff. If you have one less person that's attacking the enemy, then you're going to be doing less damage, basically. And thus far in our playtest, Mercy's damage boost hasn't shown any major issues. That said, there's still a chance we end up tuning both Discord and damage boost down if we see that they're causing issues in further testing. So it seems very unlikely that most of the support abilities are going to get a buff of any kind, really. I mean, if anything, they're just going to be kind of rebalanced a bit, or they're going to get a nerf. I don't really see the support characters getting any meaningful buffs once we move over to Overwatch 2. I think everything for the support characters is going to be decreased. However, on the other side of things, Blizzard has confirmed that tanks are pretty much going to be getting buffs across the board, and some of them, like D.Va, Hammond, and Winston, are going to be getting more utility to make up for the fact that they don't have quite as good defensive abilities as some of the other tanks. Like Reinhardt, Orisa, and Sigma are really good at protecting your team from damage. However, when you have characters like D.Va, Winston, and Hammond, who are generally going to be in the enemy back line, they're not especially going to be great at protecting your team from damage. Instead, they're more about kind of disrupting the enemy. So what they're going to be doing is they're going to give those three characters more utility to kind of make up for that lack of defensive capability, since you do have only that one tank per team now. Moving on to the changes to stun and CC. The first thing which I saw from Blizzard, which was a bit surprising, is the fact that McCree is going to possibly be keeping his stun, which is really interesting because not too long ago, Blizzard seemed pretty adamant that McCree was going to lose his stun, but now they're saying that, well, you know, maybe he'll need to keep it. So I don't know what's going to happen with that character, whether McCree is going to keep his stun or not. I guess we'll see. But they did also talk about some of the other characters and kind of the reason why there needs to be at least some CC in the game. So Blizzard said they found that so far that we've seen heroes like Doomfist, Hammond, and to some degree Tracer will need to be rebalanced and maybe even nerfed to make sure that they're not super overpowered in the new meta for the Overwatch 2 5v5 situation, because they're reducing all of the CC and the stun effects, and that means that characters with incredibly high mobility, like Doomfist, Hammond, and Tracer, are going to be, you know, kind of out of control, right? If they can just kind of move around in the backline and you can't do anything to stop them, and they have really good escape tools and that sort of thing, then they're just never going to get taken out. They're just going to be able to zip around and do whatever they want, and you can't do anything. Blizzard also commented on the fact that characters like Doomfist and Hammond not only have great mobility, but also strong CC abilities themselves. Now, for Hammond, it's not too much of an issue because he's in the tank role, and that is what the stuns and the CC and the knockbacks and stuff, that's supposed to be primarily focused into the tank role, the bruiser role in Overwatch 2. So that's okay for Hammond to have that. But for Doomfist to still have all of the stuns and the knockbacks and the knockups and all that kind of stuff, it's not really good because he has really high mobility, he has lots of CC, and in the game that's losing lots of CC, it's going to make him even more difficult to deal with. So we've known this for quite a while. Doomfist is probably going to get a really significant rework. He might still have the same abilities, maybe they'll just add more damage or lower the cooldowns and then remove some of the CC and that sort of stuff. I kind of would like to see Doomfist reworked in a more significant way, rather than just, well, we took away the CC and gave him a little more damage. I don't think that's really all that great of an idea. I think there are more interesting things that they could do with the character, and I have kind of, when I have time, been working on my own little rework of Doomfist, trying to figure out what could possibly be done, just for fun. But I think one of the possibilities, and this was brought up a long time ago, of moving Doomfist into the tank role. Now, before, when we had the 6v6, Doomfist in the tank role didn't really make a lot of sense. However, now with the changes where the characters in tank role are the ones with CC, and Doomfist just has a larger character model than a lot of the other DPS, so it kind of makes him more on the line of a tank anyways. And just with all the other changes that they've made and the fact that they're turning tanks into bruisers, it kind of makes sense for them to take Doomfist and move him into the new tank bruiser role, and that way he can retain some of the CC abilities that he has, and, they can change him around. Now, but it does seem that moving Doomfist into that new role, given all the other information we know about Overwatch 2, seems a little more appropriate now than it would have ever before. But anyways, those are all the changes that we've got. Now, some of this stuff obviously is not going to happen until Overwatch 2, but like we have been seeing, they are trying to kind of slowly move Overwatch 1 into Overwatch 2. So we've been seeing some changes in the Overwatch 1 game that are kind of trying to conform to what we can expect in Overwatch 2, because I don't think they want to have just this massive change. Like, from one day you have Overwatch 1 and this is how all the characters work, and then suddenly the next day everything is completely different. That doesn't really seem like a very good idea to do. And I think that some of the characters we're probably going to see these changes kind of rolled in slowly over time, and then that way, when we get Overwatch 2, there'll still be a change, but it won't be as significant or as massive of a leap as, just going from one to the other with no kind of build-up before that. But anyways, there you go, guys. Those are all the changes that we've got, and it looks like we're going to get more information about DPS characters probably in the next week or so. I mean, they talked about tanks, they talked about supports, and it looks like DPS is coming up next. So stay tuned. We'll see that. What do you guys think about these changes? Let me know down below. A big thanks to all the Paragons and other channel members for all your support. If you'd like to become one and grab some cool rewards, click the join button down below. And remember, always blame the controller, because it's never your fault.